Hey guys, what's up? Katsu here. Thanks for tuning in for another tutorial. So, when I published the last tutorial for the procedurally generated star field, shout out to Thomas K, who suggested making a tutorial on how to create Saturn rings. So, today we will cover that. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to erase camera, the cube and the light source, and just let me enable my screencast keys so that you can see what I'm doing. Okay, now I am going to create an image reference just so that I can have a good sense of the versions of the planet and its rings. Now that I've done that, let's go ahead and create a UV sphere and scale it up. And let's push it a little bit. I'm going to scale it on the Z axis, and I'm going just to push it a little bit down like so. There you go. Now for the rings, I'm going to create a circle. I'm going to scale it up right about there. Let's rotate it on the X axis like so. And then we'll hit tab to go into edit mode. There we're going to extrude by pressing E and then escape, and S to scale it down right about there. Let's add a couple of loops just like so, and then hit escape. And I think that's pretty much about it right now. I'm gonna go ahead and delete the reference. I don't need it right now. And let's reset the rotation of the circle. And let's look at from the top view. Okay. I'll split the screens. We're going to have a reference here on the right. And we're going to have our nodes on the left. Let's change to the shader editor, select our ring. Okay. Name this to ring and the sphere to planet. Let's select the ring, create a new material. We'll call it rings. So, how are we going to approach the rings? I have a reference here. And so the way that I'm going to tackle this problem is by focusing on three main structures. And I'm going to call them, I know this is not the proper terminology, but I'm going to call it like the outer ring, which will be this black division, which is right here, the middle ring, which is this division right here, and the inner structure, which is this one right here, because everything else we can cover with a noise texture. So I think that's going to be the best way to do it. Well, at least that's how I'm going to approach and tackle this problem. First of all, let's create a gradient texture. Make sure that you have Node Wrangler enabled by going into Preferences, Add-ons, and just typing Wrangler, Node Wrangler, so that you can hit Control T. Let me do it again. Let me delete this. Control T will create your mapping in your texture coordinate. And from here, I'm going to change from linear to spherical. And also, instead of generated, I'm going to be using the object coordinate. There you go. Now, in order to control our gradient, I'm going to use a color ramp. Actually, you know what? First of all, I'm going to create a wave texture. Yeah, perfect. That's what I wanted. And if we are going to create this outer ring right here, we're going to need a color ramp. And if we decrease the scale, if we bring it down, we're going to get less waves or rings. So maybe about there. And we can move it around with our offset. And in order to make this thinner, before the color ramp, in order to have better control, I'm going to add a math node, change it to multiply, and I don't know, multiply by 10, and just bring it back like so. If we look at our reference, this outer ring is very close to the edge. So I think I should move this a little bit further towards the edge with the offset. Right about there, maybe? I think that looks fine. So there you go. We have our outer ring. In order to keep things organized, I'm going to put a frame. I'm going to put this into our frame. Sure. So this will be outer division. Now let's create this middle division right here. So I'm going to duplicate this like so. Let's plug our object into our vector here. Let's Control-Shift-Clicks, plugs it directly or automatically into our viewer node right there. And let's reset our wave texture with backspace and our color ramp with backspace as well. So I don't think I'm going to need the multiply node for this one, so I'm going to erase it. Plug it directly, our color into our factor, push this a little bit. So I think I'm going to use the same scale, 0.56, and move our offset. Now, for this middle section, if we consider it from here up to here, it's around 2/3 of the way out. So with our offset, it will be around there maybe. And we can just push our white slider a little bit further towards the black one in order to make it more distinct. I think this looks okay. And if we want to combine both, what we can do is really simple. Again, with Node Wrangler enabled, Control-Shift, right-click, and just drag it here. This creates a mix node. And just change it to multiply and move the factor to 1. And as you can see, we have combined both the outer ring and the middle section right here, or the middle division. Let me rename it real quick. Middle division. Perfect. Okay, now let's focus on this intersection right here. And for this, what we're gonna do is the following. I'm going to create, and I have my notes here. I was testing this last bit before recording the video just to make sure that that it would work, and I think it provides good results. So again, I have my gradient, my mapping node, I'm sorry, and I'm going to add a gradient here. And so basically the way that I'm approaching this last or this next bit is that I want to have this turn into a black section and then have the white rings and then combine both and then combine that to what we have right now. So that's basically the way that I thought about this problem. In order to do that, I created a color ramp here, and then I'm going to flip it. And let's Control-Shift-Click so that we can see it here. And I'm going to bring my black slider. Oh, let me change this to spherical. And okay, there you go. So let me bring my black slider in order to make sure that it covers like the part that I want, this intersection right here. I think that's good enough. And then I am going to duplicate this color ramp and reset it. I'm going to plug it right here. And let's now focus on this part right here. Let me add a noise texture. And I'm going to, as you can see that if I have my gradient plugged into my noise texture, oh, this be, how do you do it? Control, there you go. Into my factor. I get a texture around everything. I'm just going to want this part right here. So I'm going to bring my black slider to where I want the rings to be, this intersection. I'm going to increase the scale. I think I used 50. Increase the detail and increase the roughness. And also, after this noise texture, in order to make this is just barely visible right now. So in order to bring that color or in order to bring it back, I can use another color ramp right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it around and I'm going to push my black slider around here. And I'm going to move my white slider around there, I believe. I think this looks fine. However, I'll make some modifications once I have combined both of these. So I'm going to combine this one right here, this one right here that I have. So I want this black section with this white rings. So combine these two with Control Shift right click again. And I'm going to use a mix node and just push this a little bit further. Shift to make it more precise. Like that, maybe. I think that this looks okay. Let's go ahead and combine it. So combine these two. And now I am going to multiply it again. Multiply, factor of 1. There you go. So now we have our, let's go to reference. I have my outer division, my middle division, the inner structure right here. I have the inner structure, the middle division, and the outer one. And now we're going to add the texture to the rest of the rings. And that's going to be quite easy. What I want to do, so okay, let's set a frame right here. So frame, and just put this in here and rename it to inner structure. Perfect. Now, for the texture, this is quite simple. It's going to be like kind of the same. I need a mapping node. Let's plug our texture coordinate, the object, to our vector. We are going to add a gradient texture right here. Change it to spherical. And instead of a wave texture, I'm now going to use a noise texture instead. So plug my color into my vector. Let's Control Shift click so that we can see it. And as you can see, we now have the texture on all of the surface. In order for this to look pretty, we can increase the detail to 16 and increase the roughness as well. And so that we can have better control over the color separation between black and white, we can just bring the slider back like so and increase the scale. I think this looks good. And now we can just combine this right here with this node that we have right here. So Control Shift right click. There you go. Let's expand it, change it to multiply so that we can combine them together. Move the factor to 1. Oh, so this bad boy should be here. Yes. Give it a second. Nice. Now, we can actually perhaps decrease the amount that it's being affected. Perhaps right about there. That looks nice. Look at that. That looks pretty. And finally, one last thing that I noticed, it's not noticeable here, but if you go into this other reference that I have right here, I don't know if you can see these black bands or these dark bands that are around here. I think this provides a very nice texture, and I would like to add some of it as well. So let me first add a frame and select this and just put it here. Oh, put it here. And this is going to be, I don't know, surface rings. Yeah, I call it that. And now I am going to add a noise texture. I don't care about the mapping and the gradient right now because I don't want it to be like concentric. I want it to be like a regular noise texture, like so. If I just Control Shift click again, I just want something like this. And if I want to control it, oh, add a color ramp, control the difference between black and white, and increase the detail and the roughness. I think somewhere around there. This looks fine. And let me combine this with this one right here, this last one that we created. Change it to multiply. And with the multiply, we can, we'll see in a minute how much of this final texture we will add into our final, into our current structure here. So I don't want it to be that much. I don't want this to look like this. I want it a tiny bit so that it can be barely noticeable, but it's there. So there we have it. Ooh, this looks nice. Maybe this middle structure right here, we can compress it a little bit now that I'm looking at it. So let's bring the white slider a little bit more. Yeah, like that. Look at this. Beautiful, man. Sorry, it's the first time that I just worked in this problem today, and I really enjoy how it looks. So I think that we are almost done with this. I think that we just need to add some color to this and increase the, this is kind of dark. So if I want to make it a little bit brighter, I can add a color ramp after this last node. Like so. And I'm going to bring the white slider down. Let's just give it a minute for it to finish calculating. There you go. So we can do a little bit like this. There you go. Nice. I mean, we still can see the rings very clearly. Everything looks nice and dandy. And let's see here. I want to add some color to this. So instead of white, before we add the color, I think that I'm going to add the texture to the planet so that we can have a reference on the color. So I'm just going to shade smooth and add a subdivision surface, make it a little bit smoother. And I'm going to add material. It's going to be named planet. And for the texture, I'm going to head and do this. Just give me one sec. What's the name? Okay, here it is. If you go into solarsystemscope.com, delete this real quick. You will have some solar textures that you can download, and there's one for Saturn. You can download a high resolution texture. This will make it real simple, since the focus of the video is to create the rings, not the planet itself. So I can just add an image texture, plug it into our base color right here, and I already have it saved into my desktop. Give it a second. And there you have it. Just quick and simple. And I think, if I remember correctly, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, but okay. We have the hexagon on the top. There you go. And I might want to add just a tiny bit of a bump. So I'm going to add an RGB to black and white. And then I'm going to add a bump node, plug it into our height and the normal to the normal. And obviously I don't want it to be like this rough. So just want like, I don't know, 0.1 or even less, like 0.05. It's just to give it a little hint of a bump, but nothing really special. So now that we have this, I can go back into, and maybe if I look at this reference and this one, I might want to make it a little bit more saturated. So I am going to add a hue saturation node here and just bump it up a little bit, like 1.3 maybe. Yeah, something like this. This looks fine. I think this looks good. Okay, so let's go back to our ring, and now we have a color reference that we can use. I don't know if I might be able to do this there. Obviously, this is way too, should be much less saturated than that, right? So since I don't want to like have to pick specifically or to be very precise, I can just lower the saturation here. It'll achieve the same result. So let's give it a minute here. There you go. And I'm just going to push the saturation back around, maybe there, perhaps. And I think that this looks kind of dark, so I might want to push the quite a little bit more on there. There you go. That looks nice, I think. And finally, instead of plugging into the viewer here, I'm going to plug it into our base color. I'm going to plug the base to the surface of our material output, like so. Honestly, I don't know about like the specular, the roughness, or the specular or the roughness, if we might have to modify that. I don't think that won't be necessary. We can leave it as default and it might look fine. Or we might have, now that I'm seeing it like this, I might want to bump the saturation a little bit more. Just a tiny bit. Yeah, I think like so. This is fine. I don't want it to be like active now that I'm seeing it. Be like that is good. Yeah, I think this looks nice. And finally, just add, well, change it to shade smooth and add a subdivision surface just to make it rounder. And there you have it. So I think that looks, try to do it the way it looks like here. Obviously, this has like we're gonna add some light source right now. But if we do it like this, I think this looks mighty fine. So let's just finish working with this real quick. Since I don't have a camera, let me go ahead and add a camera right now. And I'm gonna reset the position because I don't like it in here. And I'm just gonna move it right. So, I think a little bit further away. Yeah, I think that might look fine. And then let's move the camera up like so maybe, and then with rotate X like this, and maybe rotate Y a little bit. So I think we can leave it like that. Just let me go into my viewport display and add a rule of thirds so that we can have it right in the center. Yeah, there you go. And finally, since this is, I'm gonna change the background to black, and I will add a sun and move it like X-axis like RX 90. How this looks. I can see the ring. So I think this looks nice. Let's see it. The camera view. This would look like this. I'm into occlusion, some bloom. I don't think I might want green space section, or do I? I think that would be fine. I'm just gonna leave it at, I don't know, 256 for the render. Let's go ahead and save this. So this will be Saturn. And let's go ahead and render this bad boy real quick. See how it looks. And there you have it. I think this looks pretty nice. I think we achieved a very good result procedurally on how to create the rings of Saturn. And that's about it. I hope you liked the tutorial. If you do, please leave a comment, please leave a like, subscribe, and leave a comment if you want more tutorials on things that can be done procedurally. I'll do my best to figure out how to do it. Also, in other news, I just created a Patreon page. So if you like the work that I've done, I'm posting the Blender files there, as well as a high-res version of the output of the files that I've done. And so if I would greatly appreciate that if you like the content and you want to support, that'll be great. If not, just as long as you're watching the video, I think that's more than enough for me. So again, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. So I'm Katsu, and cheers.